one of the side effects of traveling is irregularity. I'm sure you're well aware of that. My girlfriend I was traveling with, I wanted to win her heart by making her clean and regular, so I gave her fresh fruit in the morning, trafala at night, all to make her clean and regular.
I'm Heather Grish, and this is the Wisdom of the Body podcast. This podcast explores the idea of body intelligence as the real key to learning the knowledge of life, or what we call Ayurveda in the ancient language of Sanskrit. We do that by connecting with today's creative leaders and experts who will help you listen to your body, trust your gut, and live in deeper harmony with nature. Come join me as we unlock the golden door to clear, direct perception and become very deep listeners. You can find the Wisdom of the Body podcast on Apple, Spotify, and Stitcher. You can also follow us by joining my email at heathergrish.com or on Instagram at heathergrish. I know you're going to love this podcast, so take a second right now to subscribe. Today I'm here with Jack Stafford, an Ayurvedic troubadour and host of the Podsongs podcast. Jack is a singer-songwriter on a mission to serve others and help people overcome the materialistic message that's distorting modern society. Jack is the host of this podcast, Podsongs, where artists interview activists and write a song for good to help them with their work. Jack is also a talented singer-songwriter in his own right and has released 18 albums over the last 20 years. My God, that's a lot. Wow. And he's English, but he lives in beautiful seclusion in the south of Italy by the sea with a lifestyle that most of us can only dream about. Welcome to the show, Jack.
Hello, Heather. Great to be here.
Oh my God, it's so great to meet you. And, I'm kind of jealous that you live in beautiful seclusion in the south of Italy.
Well, I'm jealous of you in California.
I have to say, I live in Sausalito, which is just north of San Francisco. And one of the things I love about it here is that it actually reminds me a lot of Italy. And I don't know why. There's only one Italian restaurant that I can recall, but there's just something about it that reminds me of an Italian sort of coastal vibe. I love Italy. I'm so jealous that you're there. And I'm excited to connect with you today. We got connected through Ayurveda. And
for sure.
It's a theme that you seem to like singing about in your songs. And you mentioned that you had an Ayurvedic treatment in India that actually led to a spiritual awakening. You want to talk about that first?
Yeah, sure. We'll maybe come to that because my interest in Ayurveda goes way back. Also, when I used to live in Amsterdam before I moved to Italy, and I was there for 10 years and I had many health problems. You know how everyone comes to Ayurveda usually when they're having problems themselves. I tried Chinese medicine first. Didn't really work so well for me. And then I just found an Ayurveda book, a recipe book, and it really just connected with me on really such a deep level. And ever since then, I've been so interested in Ayurveda. I don't have to sell it to you.
Yeah. So you said you had some health conditions and that really led you to seeking some help, right, for these health conditions.
Yeah. It got too much and I sold it all and went traveling around the world for 2 years as like a nomadic troubadour. So I did house concerts. So I would rock up and play in your living room for all your friends and then sleep on the couch and then go into the next town and do it again and just hand around a tip jar and living from hand to mouth, really. And I traveled by bicycle for a long time, by train, by boat, a lot of sailing, hitchhiking. I've already visited about 40 countries in 2 years, and that's very discombobulating for your doshas. Don't do that if there's anyone listening. Don't do any of this. I actually saw a guy the other day. He'd been traveling for 6 years, and I had a look at his tongue because in Ayurveda, the tongue is the mirror of the body, and I have a lot of cracks in my tongue from that period. Still haven't healed over, and his tongue was just full of cracks, and you can tell from looking at the tongue how much he'd overdone it. He'd overdone it more than me.
You're like, straight to the enema room, son.
I think I mean, don't know what he could do for that. It's like, it looked like a cancer patient. It's really bad. So many little cuts. It was crazy.
I want to talk about your podcast because it's really fun and I hope people will go and check it out after this. Explain to the audience, your methodology because there's a lot of themes related to, self-growth and personal development in your songs. And Your methodology for creating your songs from your podcast is really cool. Can you talk a little bit about how you do that?
Sure. Well, after all this traveling, I was really exhausted. So I came back to Italy. I met this Italian girl while I was traveling, and she brought me home to live in the south of Italy in the Cilento National Park, very beautiful area. So I still did some gigs, but then, COVID came along and I needed an outlet for my music. You can tell I don't like to sit still, even if I'm sitting still, I can't sit still. So I started a podcast because I'd been promoting my music with podcasts. And yeah, just such a good format, just to chat to you. You're in California, I'm in Italy. It's just such, it's the highlight of my evening. It's better than TV. So I really enjoyed it. So I started my own, but I needed a theme, so I needed a way to make my podcast a little bit different. So what I did was, because I'm a songwriter, obviously, and I write songs about when I'm traveling about people I meet. So 2 and 2 together, I interview people and then I write a song about them. And this has been going on since November last year. So it's coming up over a year now, and I've done 100 episodes. So I interview all types of interesting people in different fields, from Ayurveda to lawyers, to professors, to scientists, to celebrities, all types of people. Also, because once you've written one song about nose breathing, you can't do another one. So always different subjects. So I interview the people, we have an hour's conversation, and then I, fully inspired, fully charged up, I pull out my guitar and I find some chords and write a song. And that's it.
Yes, and Ayurveda is definitely one of the themes that comes through in a lot of your songs. And how did you end up in India to get an Ayurvedic treatment? Was this part of your 45-country tour? At what point were you there?
No, this was actually for fertility treatment, which just might be interesting to you also, because I found this very good doctor. When I was in India, so I went to India when I was in Italy, and I'd go there for a vacation. I'd finished my traveling because I've been in Italy 10 years. And have you been to India as well?
Yeah, I went to South India. I haven't been to the north yet.
To Kerala?
Kerala, Tamil Nadu, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, me too. Those are the ones I've been to. And India light. So
yeah.
But
although the spice is still pretty hot there. India hot.
That's true. So still a shock to the system. But I went a few trips, and I visited a few different centers, and you kind of get the lay of the land. There's a lot of Ayurvedic spas, the doctors, when they finish their university, those are the ones that pay the best, the West, treating the Westerners for, giving them the panchakarma. Everyone's looking for the real Ayurveda, they'll find the real one. So I traveled to different places and I got talking to different doctors, and via I met someone that's selling a lot of Ayurveda books, and I asked him, because for different diseases, he recommends different people because he knows all the doctors, he goes around, and he pointed me to one who was an Ayurvedic family and also had a guru. So he's had a very strong lineage, and he was working for himself in Chennai. So we went both my 4th or 5th trip to Chennai, and I spent a long time with him. I think it was 2 months of treatment with him. It was very long and intense, and he does all the treatments himself. So this was an oil-based treatment. So it was a very, very powerful oil, and it put it on the body, and if you put it on straight away, you would collapse. There's too much prana in there, too much energy. So there's a long preparatory phase with it gradually increasing the oils, but he does it all himself. So he doesn't have many patients, because normally all the doctors, because to put your hands in this oil is, really not, it affects your hands over the years. And so it's unusual to find a doctor still doing it. They used to always do it because when you're putting the hands on a patient and you're going over the whole body, you're transmitting energy, but you can also feel how the energy is flowing. I mean, it's the way it should be done. So yeah, it wasn't cheap.
Were you living with him?
Yeah, no, I stayed in an apartment nearby and went to his center, but he didn't have many patients. But when they'd taken the pulse with the pulse diagnosis, he learned a special technique for that. So I don't know if your listeners are familiar with it. I can explain a little bit about it.
I have not spoken about pulse diagnosis on the podcast before, so go for it.
Okay, well, I'm speaking please don't take me as an expert. There's different ways to do it. And so you put 3 fingers on your opposite wrist. Difficult to explain where exactly to put it, but
on the radial artery.
There you go. So you put those 3 fingers on there and then you apply pressure. And the first finger's Vata, second finger's Pitta, and the third finger's Kapha. And you can feel how the pulse slips. If you feel it on the start of the finger, in the middle of the finger, or behind the finger after the heartbeat. So if it kind of slides under and pops up afterwards, and which finger you feel a different pressure. And so he has this organ technique. So he can check all the organs of the body. It's, as a simile, think of a trumpet player. He has all these chord shapes to play all the notes. And if you have these slightly different positions, he can feel that how your liver is, how your kidney is. He can tell you what you had for breakfast 3 weeks ago, things like that. It's incredible. So with this technique that he learned, it takes years of practice. You have to spend a long time feeling your own pulse and then feeling other people's. It's really it's an amazing thing to learn. But that's how the Asians do it. In China, they say it's going to the doctor is like going to have your pulse. They say I'm going to have my pulse felt because it's the story of the heartbeat. So anyway, he was a real expert in this technique and did many demonstrations, and also he's a Mama expert. So he could, like acupuncture, but he can alter the flow in your energy in your body just by pressing in different places and stop the energy entirely if you upset him. So, but obviously he wouldn't do that. But so super high level doctor, and I was really, really amazed. So having all these treatments, and I was doing about a month in, I was doing pranayama, just by myself, just long breaths, and I was able to breathe in for 90 seconds and then breathe out for 90 seconds. And, that's quite a long time. Now I can manage, 30 seconds in, 30 seconds out as an example. But because there's so much prana in this oil, so it really, really powered up my body, and it led to a spiritual awakening of some sort. So I didn't see any spirits or anything, but I was more in contact with my higher self. So I was given more directions in life. I started waking up every night at 3:33 on the dot, which is quite a strange experience. But I looked for synchronicities in my daytime, and I heard about kundalini, and the doctor recommended I read a book called The Serpent Power, which is about kundalini. You jump in any questions anytime. I'm just rambling here, so if you want me to expand on any point, just let me know.
Well, I haven't read that book, Serpent Power. I want to hear about that, but I'm happy that you've talked about pulse reading, because I have not talked about it much on the podcast. And we studied, where I went to school at Mount Madonna Institute, we studied pulse with John Douillard.
Yeah.
And he does the organ level as well. And so it's extremely powerful, the pulse reading. And it's really difficult, I think, for modern people to wrap their minds around the idea that by touching somebody's artery and feeling a vibration that comes from it, and feeling the location and feeling the qualities of the pulse, the thickness, the speed, and you could learn something about a body from that. And one of the things I'm really happy that you mentioned about pulse reading, and I think this is, for even people who've studied a little bit of pulse, like I think probably some of the listeners are people who have studied a little bit of Ayurveda and have gotten a basic, education on pulse, is that if you don't know your own pulse, your pulse reading ability is very unreliable, because it's very similar to, I may have spoken about this possibly with Kate O'Donnell when she was on the podcast, this idea about projection. And when we perceive something outside of us, whether it's a person or a news story or whatever, that, there's always a layer of something that we're adding to that. And unless you understand yourself and you understand your layers that you're bringing to the table to begin with, that it's hard to see if you're really seeing with a clear set of glasses or if they've got, like a film on them or spots in certain places and stuff. So I'm really happy that you mentioned that. And I'd love to hear, after going through all those treatments, and were you...
Well, just to add, before you ask me another question, before I forget, anyone that's struggling with, like, you can't tell everything from the pulse, just think of other examples, because you can tell the state of the whole from the singular. Because if you go for blood testing, they can tell you everything, millions of different tests, DNA, your heritage, state of your body. And, if you take one leaf in the forest, take it away for testing, or you cut down one tree in the forest, you can tell how the whole world would look at the rings. You can tell us the history. So, there are other specialists in Ayurveda, or in other medicine. You have an eye doctor who you have people, I forget, is it Ayology? There's a name for this.
Ophthalmology?
Is it where you look at the eye and you look at all the blood vessels in the eye and you can tell all the health problems from the eye?
Oh, I see. I don't know the term for that. I was thinking the term for an eye doctor.
Could be Iridology. Eye.
Oh, Iridology. Iridology, like about the iris?
Yeah.
I think it's maybe Iridology.
Because it's exactly like you say, if you looked at your own eye for years, or, you look at the eye of a cancer patient, look at the eye of a diabetic person, look at the eye, all the characteristics of diseases, you learn them. And there was a voice doctor in Ayurveda who used to get people to read the Sanskrit alphabet, and he could tell everything from your voice, because at the very basic, you have phlegm, you have heavy, you have light, but if you've been listening to people's voices for 40 years and you've studied it, the voice says everything. You can study the hands and see the lines in the hand and about the whole state of the body. So everything, all the information is in the pulse is just one way to learn the state of the whole, because it works quite well, obviously, because they wouldn't do it otherwise.
I often think that it's probably not that different than how dogs and cats go up to each other and sniff each other's butts. I mean, there's so much more sensory information.
Sure, exactly, yeah. There's another great example, yeah.
There's so much more sensory information coming through all the time that, our conscious minds are like, I'm so smart. I'm going to develop this little piece of technology to help me read something. I'm going to wear my little Fitbit or Apple Watch or whatever the heck people wear these days to tell me all these things. But like, your body is doing all this stuff anyway. You just lost the ability to read it.
Exactly. It's because we're just delegating our intelligence and delegating our thinking. And so, yeah, that's why, just another reason why Ayurveda is forgotten more than we'll ever learn from, because they have just a better way of thinking. So, yeah. What were you going to ask me?
Oh, yeah. I mean, no, I'm very curious going through the treatments. Some people will go through a treatment and if something's off, not feel better or not be better at the end of it. But most people will feel better after the treatment.
Yeah.
Is that what happened with you? Like, did you get good results?
Well, the doctor, because he pointed out all this pain all over the body. And I mean, your body grows around the tension. Our form is derived from our mental functions. And in the Uber on the way to the treatment room, my legs just suddenly relaxed, as if they hadn't done before, because we were holding ourselves in tension all the time in an unconscious way. But it did really work, and it was a fantastic treatment. But I think the main thing was this spiritual awakening. Going back to that, was that I was more in tune with my higher self. But because when you do all this pranayama and this mantra, which you read about in the Serpent Power book, it purifies the nadis, the subtle bodies, the energy, your other bodies, because, we have 7 bodies, really. The physical body is 1 body. So, but with this treatment, I don't know, it must have been so full of prana and magical that it treated me that it cleaned up some of my, I don't want to say samskaras, I don't know, but some way it did enlighten me. And I found this spiritual teacher. I found a new spiritual, I'm in India, and I'm having a spiritual awakening through YouTube. I discovered this teacher who introduces me to the Aetherius Society in England. I was expecting to meet, Sadhguru or someone like that, someone dressed nice in India. But it turns out I had a spiritual enlightening that I was introduced to an organization in England, which is kind of ironic. You go halfway around the world to find something in your own backyard. But hey, isn't that always the way?
That was certainly the way in The Alchemist, right? Did you read that book?
No, I haven't read that one.
Oh, yeah, you might like that one. It's a story. I'm not going to give it away. You have to read the book. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Yeah.
I don't want to give away the ending. Yeah, it's a lovely book. Paulo Coehlo.
Okay. I've heard of it, but yeah, I've never.
Yeah. It's quite lovely. So you go to India, you get this treatment, you feel better, you have this spiritual awakening, you're doing all these kundalini practices, you're doing a lot of work with prana, a lot of work with the breath, a lot of work with the mantra. It's not weird. There's a lot of scientific research out now, because there's things that we feel and experience that we could tell people about. And then could we really convince somebody else that that's possible for them when it may or may not even be possible for them, or to prove that it really did happen to us and that we're not crazy or something like that. But there is a lot of research on the fact that a lot of the, I guess, what people are calling in the modern world, mindfulness practices or self-care practices. And, we're using more of the pranayama and mantra, sort of the Sanskrit words, the specific ways that you might employ some of these things, that they really do change the neurology and they change the structures of the brain even. So it's not just that like energy is flowing through us differently. It's even changing like structural, physical, tangible material of the body. It's not just about the energy. And there's a lot of research coming out about that now. So I don't think it's weird to talk about how these things change us and that they do. And it sounds like at the end of this treatment that you had, that you call it a spiritual awakening. You said you were in touch with your higher self. Can you talk a little bit more about what that feels like? What's the difference between being in touch with your not higher self and your higher self?
Great question. Yeah. Well, there's a problem with Western psychology in that they split us into two, the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And they do a grave error there because they group our higher self with our lower self. Our subconscious can take a fraction of a gram of vitamin K and send it to a cell in your body, in your lower leg, for example. I mean, it's doing millions of computations. And if I chop your head off, the brain won't be working anymore. That's your subconscious, yeah. So we're all in agreement about that. I mean, and then the conscious mind is this idiot that is speaking at the moment. And, that we try and tame with mindfulness practices and meditation practices, concentration, basically. But there's the higher conscious, which is the real you, it's the beyond the soul, it's the spirit. So that's the divine spark of God, which we are all, and which is the very quiet voice in the head. Sometimes that comes across. Listen to that, wakes us up at 3:33 in the morning. Because when I started waking up at that time every day, I thought, you Google it and it says, well, maybe it could be an angel talking to you or one of your spirit guides, or it was probably my higher self, because that connection comes when you're kind of waking up.
I don't think it's actually that weird to be waking up at the same. My child's father actually can go to bed at night and say, I want to wake up at this time. And he will wake up at that time. I'm like, how do you do that?
I interviewed a sleep doctor on the podcast and he said it's very important to wake up at the same time every day. It's one of the big health tips. But yeah, anyway, I did this kundalini, and then I started to come to this Aetherius Society in England. And he is a master of yoga in England in the 1950s after the war. So it's important to know that when we do these mindfulness practices and these meditations and affirmations, we're just working on the conscious mind. But with these practices like the pranayama and the mantra, a mantra must be in Sanskrit. Otherwise, it's an affirmation if it's in English. They are sound vibrations, and science will tell you we're just waveforms, of energy, and everything is a wavelet. So with these mantra and these pranayama, you actually increase the energy in your body. You activate parts of the kundalini, and it's the science of yoga. That's what it's all about, union with God.
Yeah, you mentioned that you're really interested in mysticism. And why do you think that's so important for people to learn about today?
Well, because, as I said, the materialistic message, even when I was into Ayurveda, I was into the materialistic side of it, You do body, mind, and spirit, you fix the body and then you work on your mind and then you work on your spirit. And I think there's too much. I was too focused on, taking a pill, finding the best doctor, getting the best physical, materialistic treatment, I didn't realize we are energetic beings. We're creatures of energy, and that I didn't realize the mechanics of it, that the reincarnatory cycle, because when we die, we go to another realm, which is right here in this room where I am now, but just a different frequency of vibration. So there are other realms existing here. I could be under a mountain, I could be under the sea. It's just at different levels of the electromagnetic spectrum. So this kind of mysticism is actually only mystical because it's been delegitimized and made more woo-woo because it's not in the mainstream. So I want to get people to understand that we are spiritual beings, but there is real mechanics of it. We have 7 bodies, and you actually die with, you leave 3 bodies, and then you go to the astral plane, and you reincarnated there, and then you come back here, you go back there, and you're going through this experience cycle. So knowing that has really helped me get a picture on this classroom that I'm in now.
Your life classroom?
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's really easy for us to talk about your songs, right? It's really easy for us to talk about some of the themes of your songs are really cool. And like, I guess, and I want to talk about some of those songs because I think this audience would really like them, especially that song, Clean and Regular. I want to start with that one. So Jack and I connected, he sent me one of his songs, which was really beautiful. Everything is Perfect was the one that you sent me. And I love that song. And then I listened to it, and then I listened to one of your other songs, and I just about died listening to this song because everybody who's into Ayurveda, you know that we are super, super, super into talking about poop. Right. And Jack has this great song, Clean and Regular. And Jack, tell us about this song. How can we connect the audience with this song? It's just so great.
Yeah, well, it was, one of the side effects of traveling is irregularity. I'm sure you're well aware of that. My girlfriend who I was traveling with, I wanted to win her heart by making her clean and regular. So I gave her fresh fruit in the morning, trafala at night, all to make her clean and regular. And then it'll all be all right. She'll love me all right. And then I did this music video with the toilet paper while I was waiting outside the bathroom door, getting more and more frustrated. But the production of the song is kind of Coldplay. So it's a big full production. But if you listen carefully, the lyrics are humorous, shall we say.
If she wants clean and regular, I'll be alright. I'll take her fresh fruit in the morning, trafala at night. I'll make her clean and regular. She'll love me alright.
Yeah, and not all of your songs are humorous, but that one is. And I like it because I think a lot of people actually have a hard time talking about their bowel movements. And I think most of the people I work with now are women, but I've worked with a fair amount of men throughout the years as well. And I feel like maybe with a woman, maybe it would be different if I was a male practitioner, but I have found men having a difficult time with me as a female practitioner talking about their bowel movements. Do you notice that?
No, I haven't. I'm quite open about it. But yeah, I embarrass everyone by talking about it. The techniques for crouching, because I get on the toilet, with the 2 feet like you do in India, and I'm good at balancing there. And yeah, Americans are crazy because they wipe their ass with paper, which is just the most absurd thing to do. If you had some on your hands, you wouldn't, give me some paper, you would wash them. So here in Italy, we have a bidet and a bum gun. In India, we use. So with water, I just can't get over the idea of the American toilet habits. So I'm sure there's a whole album.
I mean, when I went to India, pretty much all of us Americans were like, toilet paper is gold. We're so used to our toilet paper, but I wasn't staying in places that had bidets. And frankly, I don't know that I would trust the water that much in India either to be, squirting my parts with water from India. But, these little cups they had in the bathroom to wash yourself with, like every bathroom, or they had these like little hoses, right? Where you could hose yourself down. It's not nearly as neat as how bidet technology has made its way through Europe and Japan and the United States. But I was just staying at a house this weekend that had a bidet, and I was like, wow, this really is better. As long as you could trust the water.
Are you a bidet user or an everyday basis?
No, we don't have one. It's not a common thing.
That's incredible. It's just...
Yeah, it's becoming more common. In fact, where I live, there's a lot more people that have them now, but
when I go back to toilet paper, when I have to sometimes, it takes so much longer. You're dabbing it, you're scraping, you're pulling. I have a very hairy ass, and you can't get it clean. And you're tapping the hole, then it's still there. And tapping a bit more, it's still dark. And you're going through sheets and sheets of paper, and you're scraping the skin. It's a very sensitive area. It's a mucous membrane. It's just a stupid idea. So yeah, just using water on there is, once you've bidet, you never go back.
A lot of people know that I got pregnant with my son on the first try and had him the year I turned 40. But a lot of people don't know that I first tried to get pregnant in my early 30s. The journey to motherhood was the most frustrating journey I have ever gone through. And that's what prompted me to write the book, The Ayurvedic Guide to Fertility, about the methods that ultimately helped me through that journey and helped me come out healthier, more aligned with nature, and frankly, more mystified on the other side of it. So if you're really stumped about the things that are within your power to change in your fertility and reproductive health, and you are curious about what you might be able to activate by getting more in touch with your body through the methods I used, then connect with me on Instagram, because there are definitely ways to go through the process in complete surrender. So find me on Instagram at Heather Grish. That's at Heather GRZYCH. Yeah, so when toilet paper in the US was like when everybody went on lockdown and the toilet paper was, hard to find in the stores, because for some reason, this is just so weird, right? When everybody gets told they're going to be on lockdown, all the toilet paper flies off the shelves in the store. And I don't know if that happened in Europe where you are, but you just couldn't get toilet paper or paper towel right after we went. I don't know why that, and like you said, I was really happy that I had been to India and that I'd learned a different way to, clean myself after going to the bathroom. And I was like, well, I just, grab a measuring cup or a Tupperware out of the kitchen and take care of it. You can
also just get a bottle of water, a liter, if you're in India next time, a liter of fresh, clean water, and, reach your hand through and tip it down at the back, make a little cup under there and just pour into the cup of your hand and scrub, and then use a bit of toilet paper to dry afterwards. And it's faster. It's much, much faster. It's easier. You get much better results. Yeah, it's a no-brainer. If you brought up a child that way and then you showed him the paper idea, he would just think you were batshit crazy.
I love that you're bringing this up, because literally my next thought was, because my kid, he's nearly 5. And when they're that age, they don't always clean themselves after they go. You're kind of still helping them. When they're babies, you're cleaning them all the time, right? And then the more autonomous they get, they have to start doing things for themselves. And he can go number 1 by himself, but he always needs a buddy with him when he goes number 2. And I'm curious, I might actually explore that with him. I didn't even think about introducing him to the water method, but we're not really set up for it in our house. But I'm intrigued now, and I'm going to think about it.
Yeah, you can get a bum gun, the hose that you just plugs in. But you want to have the temperature control, otherwise cold water in the morning can be quite stimulating.
But I could just imagine him getting a hold of this and just spraying the entire bathroom.
Yeah, okay, well, I'm not taking any responsibility here. It's up to you. This is going to test your parenting.
Oh my gosh. So I love that you made that song, and everybody should go check out that song. You're going to love Jack's work. And some of the other themes of your music are not so funny, right? That video has some humor to it, but some of them are more poignant. I think talking about poop is very poignant, but some of the other ones are more poignant. And there's a song about sober letters to my drunken self. I think that was inspired by one of your podcast guests.
Yeah, I'm not a recovering alcoholic, but I was in my mind for a few days while I tried to write about it. And actually, when I was writing that song, I drank more, because I was trying to think about, because he's a recovering alcoholic and he wrote this book.
I drink to start. I drink to silence repetitive thoughts.
I wrote a song about it, but...
So you wanted to understand what it was like to be a drunken person?
No, but just when you're reading about alcohol all the time, it's like when you watch the Netflix series and somebody takes a drink, they're doing it every other scene. You start to think, I could have a drink as well, so. But I try and, my guests are all different types of people. But before Podsongs, I did do an Ayurveda album, which is 17 songs where I studied, Ashtanga Hridayam, one of the bases of Ayurveda.
Yeah.
It's all in these sutras. And
this is a great book. It's one of the 3 main classical textual references for Ayurveda.
Exactly. So I kind of it's in reverse order of importance. So I kind of took the first few chapters and put them in 3-minute songs with rhyming lyrics to try and get you, if you just hear the basics of Ayurveda, you can get it from my lyrics. So helps, because I can remember now, the lyrics to Vata. She's Vata, dry and light, rough to the touch, cold as ice, subtle and clear, can't stop moving around. So that's how I remember now the qualities of Vata, just through my own lyrics.
Well, it's so classic because the way that it was always taught in India was through chanting the sutras in the book. Now, it's harder for an English speaker to do that, because you have to go through all the transliteration part. It's just more time consuming. So I really like that. That's super cool. I think people will remember it really easily. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember it, and so it's really helped me, even if nobody else does. But I've got the rules. I've got songs about Panchakarma, Agni versus Ama, the two digestive concepts that will turn your world around. The crimes against wisdom. You're the son of the sum of the things you've done. The 14 urges, how you suppress different urges. I've got songs about the different doshas and the Vikruti when you go out. I interviewed Robert Svoboda about his Ayurveda expertise, and Vikruti has all the imbalances. It's a lot to be taken just using the lyrics of a song. You can, use it as a tool for good. A lot of people seem to write their lyrics, in front of the microphone just 5 minutes before the song's released, but I'm really trying to build from the lyrics.
Yeah, it's funny. All my teachers, because all my teachers, I think except for John Duyard, who did study in India but was American, they all learn in Sanskrit the sutras, and if you'll see them actually trying to recall something, and they'll go through the song in their head to try to recall a medicine that treats something.
That's what they did it. That's how they learned it back in the day. They didn't write it down, they just remembered it. And amazing how they can, in one small sutra, they can tell, because Sanskrit has so much more meaning than Western medicine. So you can, in a small phrase, you can include the time, the way you should collect the medicine, the time of year you should do it, things you should avoid, so many things in there just from the sutra. So yeah, it's incredible. The song I wrote for John Duyard I recorded for him was Agni versus Ama, which is how you can build your digestive fire through correct eating behavior and lifestyle, and you're as old as your Agni.
You're as old as your Agni. That's great. And some of the other themes that came through is a song you have about killing the kids.
Right. Yeah. That was for a dietitian on the Podsongs, about how you're killing the children with food, mouthful by mouthful, plate by plate, delegating their fate. Can't remember the rest. But it was about how the food is slowly killing the children.
Yeah, and it's killing the adults too. And I think anybody who's been through like a big dietary change really understands that, and the way that the agricultural and food systems and consumer products companies have not really put health at the forefront of.
Sure.
I don't think it's always necessarily like an evil thing. I just don't think people really understand health, like what makes a healthy body.
Right. It's not until I moved to the south of Italy as well. When I used to live in Amsterdam, I would go to the supermarket and everything's there, no? I mean, you've got your tomatoes all year round, you've got your peppers, you've got everything. But when I'm now in Italy, because I go to the farmer's market, they only sell, because it's cheaper and it's organic, they only sell what they've got. So they've got the artichokes coming in soon, and they're perfect now later in the spring, because they will scrape the bile off the mucus from your digestive tract and help you with a big fiber boost. And then, the fruits available in the summer, all these building fruits to help you, stay cool, lots of cooling fiber. And then the nuts come in the autumn and they help you put on the weight for the winter. And there's all this eating in season is one of the keys in Ayurveda. And that's really, really been much easier when I'm just buying locally.
Yeah, it's interesting. Modern lifestyles, as civilization gets more and more developed and we have more people systems and technology systems handling things, it seems that we get more and more disconnected from nature. And Ayurveda is certainly good at helping us reconnect with being that dog that can detect what, is going on with that other dog when we smell its butt.
Yeah. John Duyard, he had these cards for the different seasons as well. And, we don't realize how much thinking, how much mental bandwidth, they say, is a good analogy. When you have to think about all these things, it's just too overwhelming, But if you are in the environment where all that's taken care of, where your body gets this food and that's food because it's available, then we can get on with other things, But if we're in an air-conditioned environment and choosing what meal based on what dosha, based on, you could drive yourself crazy. So Ayurveda can be a bit much, I've found. I don't know if you found that.
Yeah, I think I've found it useful, like, again, sort of tap back into that I call the wisdom of the body. And, because you can sort of start to treat it like a religion where,
Yeah.
you get into that religious mind, which is
Sure.
following rules rather than like actually directly perceiving something.
I've got a song about it, the rules of Ayurveda. I get so tired of the rules, the dinacharya. The rules are driving me crazy.
It's so funny. I love having my options narrowed. I didn't like that at points of my life where I didn't like my life because I wanted my life to be different. So then I wanted freedom. I wanted all my options available to me so that I could but I think I really like my life. I quite like it when people can eliminate me having to use my imagination. I think our imaginations are actually like way overrated.
Well, we're always going through this curve.
Yeah.
We're on different stages of the curve, and we start, we're super enthusiastic, and we do everything, and then we keep the essentials. No, I mean, I studied, as you said, to be an Ayurveda practitioner, and I didn't actually treat anyone, but I feel like it's something I should have gone through at school, because now I know so much that I'd forgotten about. It's just you adopt it. I've got a bit of a cold now, so I'll make some ginger and I'll sipping hot water, and these things I didn't know before, and then they get worse and worse.
Yeah, that is why, when I learned yoga, I taught yoga afterwards. When I learned Ayurveda, I always think that being a teacher after you learn something actually helps. I mean, you could do it in a different way through your songs because you're a teacher that way as well. But this idea that you're spreading that and amplifying it to other people, that you turn the light on, it comes through you again. So it like reinforces the knowledge and it reminds you of this.
You're exercising it. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
speaking to you now, I'm going to be more conscious later of, maybe I should add some more spices to my food because I also, forget. So definitely having conversations like this and is fantastic. Yeah.
And also like you're in Italy, so you have different food. And this is one of the, I think, challenges of anybody who's not Indian studying Ayurveda, culturally Indian in terms of like being used to the food and things like that, where I grew up actually in a hometown that was nearly 50% people who identified as Italian American in the US. So I'm very Italian American, which is different than an Italian. But so culturally, like I grew up on pizza and pasta and, things like that, and chicken Parmesan and eggplant Parmesan and certain foods and certain spices that were, not necessarily things that were in India. And when we're taught Ayurveda, we're taught typically by people who culturally are Indian and have grown up on Indian food. So we often learn the recipes of those people from their culture, but then the art comes in, like, how do you apply these principles to like the food that's in your culture if you can't get this like super amazing herb or spice that is from India?
Where I am now, I'm 20 miles away from where Anchal Keys went, to live, and wrote the Mediterranean diet book, and had a huge influence on American healthcare. He lived to be 100 there, and if you look back what they ate for what the Mediterranean diet is, it's eating in season. It's pasta once to twice a week. It's adding all the rosemary, the oregano, these herbs, and 101 other things. Different vegetables. And if you go back in all the cultures, the diet adapted for them. But here where I am in Italy now is a diet epidemic of diabetes because everyone's having pasta every day, and then bread with it, and then some biscuits for breakfast, and maybe pastisseries, flour and everything, beige food. So it's just common sense. You don't need to get all the Indian spices. Is not compulsory, but they're very powerful ones. So obviously I'd use them, but using the traditional way of eating, and changing your diet with the seasons consciously, the barley and the rice in the summer because it's cooling, and then the heavier wheat in the winter, when you do need it. So it's all this going back, to how we used to be.
I think for me, one of the most important things I learned, which is like a super simple thing, was because, everybody looks at protein and calories and fats and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Was really this like is what I'm eating dry or is it oily or is it,
Right.
like I'm eating popcorn. What's that? It's like it's exfoliating my digestive tract as it goes through, just
Yeah.
that common sense, like sensory experience
Sure.
piece, which is different than, I've memorized and I've calculated and, the amount of this and this. It's just really getting in touch with that qualitative experience.
It is. That's something before I learned about Ayurveda, I would never have crossed my mind, but now that's kind of common sense. If I've got a heavy cold, mucus, maybe it's good to have some popcorn to, scrape out the thing. One thing I struggle with is the balance between Agni and Ama and Vata, because, Vata, it needs the stabilizing, the oily, the heavy to bring it down, but then you increase Ama. So, your tongue gets white. So if you don't have a good fire, so I do struggle between this Ama and Vata balance, which maybe...
Yeah, I did too, actually. I oiled myself so much when I was in Ayurveda school that I gave myself a lipoma, which is like a little fatty tumor.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I had to do a bunch of fasting to get rid of it. But yeah,
Which
it's like
the Vata.
Yeah. Yeah, but luckily I think I'd gotten so far out of balance the other way that I had some time to go through that before
Someone told me that, did you know that a plane is off course 90% of the time?
And then how do they get it back?
Well, there's passenger planes that constantly, when you're flying between San Francisco and New York, it's off course 90% of the time. So they're just steering back and then they go past the course and they go back on course. So 90% of the time they're off course. That's kind of a good analogy for your diet. As long as you know your destination, you're going to get there and you're going to keep on a rough. Otherwise, before you run out of fuel, you fill in the rest of the analogy.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you were super far off course, it would be harder. But if you're like a little bit off,
yeah,
all the time, super
throughout
easy
the day,
to get back,
you get
right?
back on, get on, yeah. Don't overdo it every meal. You don't overeat. You don't eat not enough. But if you go off a little bit, but make sure for the next meal I'm hungry and I've got a good appetite and I don't eat too much. And, then I get every day and every way I'm getting better and better and better and better.
I have to ask you this question because you have your own podcast, and I was surprised you didn't break out and start asking me questions because you're so used to interviewing people. Because it's really like a mode, right? To be in questioner mode versus the person answering the questions. Because I've been on both ends of it. And I was curious, do you prefer to be interviewed or to be the interviewer?
I like a healthy mix, balance. Otherwise, it's too much, talking about myself every day, even I get bored of myself. So, because I interview people I'm very interested in. So, I'm learning, I wouldn't have been able to tell you. I pick up quotes that I've told you about a passenger plane off course from other people and I reuse it and things like that. So I'm learning all the time. So yeah, a healthy balance, I think.
Okay. So I ask everybody this question at some point in the show. What does the wisdom of the body mean to you, Jack?
Oh, good one. Good one. Wisdom of the body. Depends in what way you could mean that, because I have some affirmations when I'm doing my pranayama. That's what springs into my mind, is that I am the divine spirit, which is now mastering my mind and my body. So in one sense, I'm trying to master my body and do affirmations to get my body to do what I want it to do, and at the same time, I'm trying to listen to it and be kind to it and send loving messages and trying to listen to it. So it's a careful balance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you just assume that your body knows everything and that you don't have to have discipline.
Yeah.
And because I think a lot of it has to do with the environment that you're in and the history leading up to this moment and the programming that's already there. And if we are in a healthy environment with healthy people around us, I'm guessing there's probably a chance that we're going to have healthier behaviors.
Yeah, but it's exactly what you said with the discipline. Before I heard about the sleep doctor, what I learned from interviewing him on a podcast was how important it is to wake up exactly the same time every day. Before that, 20 years I worked from home, as a writer, as a musician. I listened to my body. If I went to bed late, I'd wake up late. If I was tired, I'd wake up. So sometimes I wake up different times every day, 2.5 hours, 2 hours difference, 3 hours difference. One day I'm up at 5:30, next day I'm up at 9. That's an extreme example, but if I went out late. But now I try and have gentle discipline, is that I wake up at the same time every day and I don't go to bed too late, and don't get drunk the night before. But that's the kind of example of what I meant by, and if I'm tired in the afternoon, but it's not the season for day sleep, because it can lead to congestion, as you can now hear. I did have a nap today. So this, listening to the body, but also knowing what's best, like having a little child, you listen to it because the little child is the fountain of wisdom and says so many wise things and is so in touch with nature, and you should listen to everything the child says, but you do enforce. You don't let him eat whatever he wants. You don't let him go to sleep whenever he wants. You don't let him run the house. So it's this give and take, which I try and aim for.
For these moments where we get off course, Ayurveda is such a helpful friend to have on our side. And I love that you talked about the sleep thing. So I've seen, is also because you brought up fertility, and that's a big focus of my work, is that I have seen the people that are very sleep disrupted. There is a theme to that in people that are having trouble with fertility, sleep disruption. And some of that has to do with discipline. Some of that has to do with life and mind and a bunch of things, but some of that has to do with discipline and not going out to that super fun party.
Yeah.
Or like going and leaving early.
You are in the night as you are in the day. So if your dreams will be, if you're running around doing 101 things and you're stressed in the day, you'll be stressed in the night. So that's important to remember as well, I think.
Well, Jack, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really hope people check out your show and your songs on your YouTube channel. And, especially I think you're singing about some important things and the themes of, how we can really improve our lives and get in deeper connection with, sort of the mystical realm or the spiritual or higher selves. It's super important. And the way that you've been able to carry that through your collaborations and your songs is really great. So please let everybody know where to find you.
Yeah, podsongs.com, Podsongs on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Just look for Podsongs. Spotify, Deezer, every channel. Podsongs.
Well, thank you so much. And it sounds like it's bedtime for you. So I'm going to say,
I got to eat now.
Night.
I got to have a
okay.
dinner
time.
Not try and eat too much. No heavy cheese. Light food.
Yep. Not with those boogers in the nose.
No. 100%. Maybe a few
little
bit
have some honey water.
Honey water. Okay. I'm going to do it.
So great having you. Yeah. Awesome having you.
My pleasure.
Everything is perfect.
Thank you for tuning in and dropping in with us today. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. I really want to hear your feedback. To learn more about my work, visit heathergrish.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. And meet me here next time on The Wisdom of the Body.